Hey, it's that time again for the Sonic Host Coast to Coast podcast or show. Or, I don't know. I think some people say that you shouldn't call your show a podcast. It's just a show. It's more successful that way. I'm your host, Radrey, and I am, of course, always joined by our secondary host, also our host. I don't know. The other host guy, Malzilla. How are you today?
Howdy. Screonk, my friend, Screonk.
Screonk. What does that mean?
Screonk. It's kaiju for I love you. Actually, no, it's just that's the phonetic spelling of Godzilla's roar. Screonk. The more you know.
Huh. Learn something every day. So we are here again to tell you about the great news of the Sonic show, or I guess Sonic in general. You know, Sonic the Hedgehog. We like this brand. We like it a lot. And so there is some news that we wanted to talk about, because there's a lot to talk about. You know, forget all the introductions, forget the setups. We have something very important to talk about. So Nintendo Direct had a presentation, I believe, the other day, and it was about introducing a new video game with their flagship character, Zelda. Not Link, mind you. Zelda. Now, this marks the second game now that Nintendo has made. Yes, of this year. Oh, wait, is it coming out this year? I actually didn't look into the details.
I mean, well, you know, Peach Showcase came out this year, but September 26th, so yes, this September.
Okay.
So it's coming out.
September 26th. Okay, that was okay. So it was a very big surprise to everyone.
A month before Sonic Shadow Generations.
Wow. Okay, so nobody knew about this game before coming out, right? Now, mind you, this is a game about Zelda. It's not about Link, even though every Zelda game is about Link, right?
I mean, to be fair, it's called The Legend of Zelda. Give the girl her due.
Right. Well, let's hope people finally figure it out. It's sort of like, what is it, like Frankenstein's monster, right? Everybody always thinks that Frankenstein is like the name of the monster, but no, that's the name of the doctor who made the monster. You know what I mean? It's sort of like one of those sort of things. Like nobody could, everybody always like calls it what it is. It's like, oh, it's that Zelda guy. No, it's whatever. Like, mom, stop calling all my systems Nintendo. Right? It's sort of that sort of thing. Anyway, I digress. So what's really interesting about this? Now, this marks 2 video games. Now that, as you said, we had the Peach video game that came out a little earlier this year. What was it called? Peach's House of Fun. What was it called?
No, Princess Peach's Showcase.
That's Showtime. I just looked it up.
Showtime.
Showcase.
Which is AKA Princess Peach does her various cosplays, and there was much rejoicing on the internet for a variety of reasons. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. But yes, which kind of begs the question, when is Sega making an Amy Rose video game? Because obviously, based on what I know about Sega, is they're going to be hungry. They're going to be hungry for this, because they want, as we'll talk about a little later in this show, they're going to definitely want this piece of the pie. They want to be, you know, in the know. They want to be, you know, with the status quo. They want to, you know, revert the status quo, as we'll talk about later. But the question is I bet you one thing is that if they're not working on an Amy Rose game now, they sure as shit are working on it now. So, yeah, Malzilla, thoughts?
Yeah, you know, Sega's kind of been put on notice as, you know, Nintendo's got 2 story-driven of 2 of their iconic female characters, and here we are in 2024, and the only Sonic spin-off games we've gotten were a couple Game Gears for Tails, Knuckles Chaotix, and Shadow. So all of the big 3 of the big 5, not counting Sonic because he's the main character, have gotten their own spin-off. Hell, Robotnik had the Mean Bean Machine game for the Genesis. So
that.
I mean,
I guess that counts.
Like, yeah, I guess his name's on it.
So why can't
So
why
yeah,
can't Sega make a a spin-off game that like works? Why can't they do that?
I have no
I
because
mean,
I think
are there any spin-off games that are like successful?
that's a good question.
I guess if it's made by Nintendo, it's fine because they always work on quality, right? Because it's nice
Yeah,
when Nintendo makes something different.
yeah. Um,
Looking at you, Splatoon.
well, isn't like the Yakuza series have a bunch of different spin-offs that are like popular? I'm
I
trying
don't
to think of
know.
like something like I haven't really played the Yakuza
I
games,
haven't
but I've
either.
so maybe that's our fault.
No, I guess. Well, I guess people, our dear listeners, if you can think of any great spin-off games that like change the world, let us know. I mean, I could probably just Google it right now, but that's not what's important right now. What's important right now is to talking about how are we going to make this Amy game? What is this Amy game? Because if anybody's been, if you're on Twitter, like degenerates like us, you see all the garbage and all the great things that they have to say. I mean, okay, I started off a little negative. I'll be a little more positive. People are sort of spitballing. They're coming up with ideas. They're talking about what works and what doesn't work. And one of those happens to one of the big tweets that's making the rounds. Um, I'm not going to pick on the person who made the tweet because I could pick on them all day. So there was a person who clipped some of the Bumblecast. So I don't know how out of context this is, because I'm not probably like a lot of people out there, probably like a lot of our
I know
listeners.
this. I know the specific episode they clipped, and it was a guest special about someone Radrey and I both know. They asked a question, and the answer has kind of ruffled the feathers, the quills of some vocal members of the Amy fandom. And I think before we go any further, we kind of have to look at Amy's history as a character and the direction Sega has taken her. Because again, debuted unofficially in the old Shabukan manga. What's the word I'm looking for?
You got me. I don't know what that is. What's a
You
Shabukan
know,
manga?
or when Sonic does the thing where he transforms into Nikki and Nikki transforms into
Oh,
Sonic.
Shogakukan, the really really
Shogaku,
old one. What about that?
yeah, that's technically like I think Amy's a first unofficial official appearance. Kind of almost like how before Sally officially debuted in Sat AM, the Archie comics had sent out the miniseries, the Sonic miniseries, and had kind of just started. So that's technically she showed up there first, even though, like for Amy, her main introduction was in Sonic CD, and then for like Sally's main introduction was in Sat AM. So they tech for Amy's case, they had her in this really bizarre setting that it was manga exclusive. They bring her into CD. She's in it for like 90 seconds at most. She shows up, gets kidnapped by a Metal Sonic. You see her again in Stardust Speedway, Creed, and then you kind of see her, I think, at the end in the end cinematic. But that's it. She showed up in a couple of like Sonic Drift, but then with the kind of soft reboot that was Sonic Adventure, Amy came in with a makeover, kind of a more boisterous personality. Obviously, she still loves Sonic, but she's kind of a little clingy, and of course, you have
Kind
some
of.
localization.
That's an understatement. But yeah.
Uh, I'm trying to be kind because I'll be
Okay.
honest, Amy barely cracks the top 25 Sonic characters for me. If you look at the entire franchise as a whole, and she's not even in my top 10 Sonic girls female characters. So I'm not a huge Amy fan, but I don't dislike Amy, and I do kind of want to see her get her due. So I feel like I'm giving a fairly impartial review of the character. So obviously, Adventure did well with her. She was on her little adventure to save Birdie. Um, she wasn't playable in Sonic 2 except for battle multiplayer, but she had some fun things. Sure, she thought Shadow was Sonic. She saved Sonic. from Prison Island on the condition that he'd marry her, and he said, "Nah." She's like, "Fine, I'll let you open anyway." And then in Heroes, she got a lot more. This time you're gonna marry me, or I'm gonna beat you with my hammer. It's like, whoa! And again, Sonic X, she's a lot more bit of a spitfire. People, that was their first introduction to Amy. They're obviously very attached to it, but
I like
there's
that
also kind
version of
of
Amy, the Sonic X
yeah.
one. If I guess if I had to
Um,
choose one that I liked, it's that one.
it's not my favorite, I'll be honest, but
Okay.
people, that's how a lot of people got introduced to the character. That's the one they think of when they think of Amy Rose. It's completely valid. I support that. But a lot of her affection, overest affection for Sonic, was kind of made in the sense of humor, and humor is subjective, and it is usually the first thing to change as times and social views change. So, kind of a lot of what Amy was, even though it was played for laughs, kind of people started analyzing it through a different lens of, well, what if this was Sonic chasing after Amy? And yeah, I know this argument has been played to death, but it is what it is. And so, as times have changed, Amy's kind of been toned down. You know, they're limiting her sugar intake. She can't have as much strawberry shortcake as she used to. And then we kind of
Did you
had
read that
the
last comment or that comic she was in, where she put all that sugar in her coffee? My God, Amy,
yeah,
what the hell?
diabetes much. Um, but then you had Boom Amy, who I'll be honest, I think it's my favorite Amy. Yes, she still had feelings for Sonic. She did still do some funny things of like, oh, Sonic, you're here. I'm here. We should have dinner. Oh, what are these candles? And again, kind of some funny stuff, but they also kind of made her the team mom. She's the uh, as good as she was. I can understand why people didn't quite jump to her, but also at the same time, I will say this for Boom: these are all caricatures of the main cast. They're kind of all of their traits either dialed up to 11 or dialed back to like -5. And it's all for comedy's sake. But the clip in question that we got to that has kind of, again, ruffled people's feathers is that in Frontiers, Amy's a lot more subdued. She's not as kind of perky and Genki as she always has been. And then her kind of line is, I'm going to go travel the world. Maybe I'll bring cream and sticks along. And I'm going to go spread love to the world. And it kind of in conjunction with a line from IDW issue 2 where yeah, she says she loves Sonic, but she also kind of has come to realize Sonic is always going to be Sonic. She's kind of got to let him do his thing. And, Sonic's thing is freedom, runs around like the speed of sound and does his own thing. And then like her recent bio in Sonic Friends Forever saying that, she wants to be a champion of love. Yes, Sonic is, the apple of her eye, but she's not kind of actively chasing him around, which is kind of funny because now that she's not, they're hanging out a lot more. So it's like Amy has been extremely prominent in the IDW comics run, more than Knuckles. Like, you can only say the main game trio for the IDW comics is Sonic, Tails, Amy. So Amy's getting a lot of focus. Again, difference of opinion. A lot of people are blaming Ian Flynn, saying, "Oh, he's ruining it with his American writer ways." I think more than anything, and we're going to talk about how Sega's shifting and altering the direction. This is the course Sega is taking it. Is ultimately anything that Ian writes has to be approved by Sega because Ian is a freelance writer. He's not actually a Sega employee. So, Sega's keeping him on retainer. And eventually, if he does something that they don't like, they can just cut him loose. It's, Ian is not the Sega overlord some people make him out to be.
Well, I mean,
So,
what I can say about this is, I mean, first off, I give this idea 2 yawns out of 5. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of this. It's just sort of like this. This is boring, man. I don't like this idea. I mean, like, second of all, not to talk down to somebody, but you really should. I mean, people should really consider the source of where the statement is coming from. Now, if you look at this person's profile, who clipped this episode of Ian talking about the Amy thing, this person
That came out in August of last year.
Yeah,
this is not a new piece of news. This is almost a year old.
Yes. Well, yeah, the internet's really good at digging up stuff and making it seem like it's brand new. So I guess if there's anything we can learn about the world is that this is how you make history, folks. You know, so that's how you do it. But anyway, again, to state this really bluntly, and I'm not talking down to this person, but I'm just saying is if you look at this person's profile, they are a teenager. Their understanding of how Sega works and how, how the characters developed, they probably have a very limited understanding of how everything, is put together, how a company, operates. So they're probably not seeing it in terms of like, oh, Ian Flynn's a freelancer. But the issue with all this is that everyone's just looking at it from that lens, because a lot of us are busy. We have things to do. We have jobs. We have families. We have school. We have a lot of things to work on. So
jobs again, multiple jobs.
Yeah, not just one job, multiple jobs. So and no thanks to Twitter, because Twitter for some reason they have this thing where like they love to strip all context from everything, right? And then if there is enough context, nobody reads it because it's too much to go through, right? Right? So
nuance does not exist on Twitter.
What's that?
Nuance does not exist
nuance,
on Twitter.
No. I mean, you can't hear anybody talk, and that would just get really annoying. Imagine if you had Twitter and all it was just voices. It'd be like what is it, like Professor Xavier? Like hearing everybody's voice at the same time? Like, it'd be like that show Legion. You ever seen that show Legion where like all those people are talking to him at once?
Well,
it would be just like that.
Legion is Xavier's son.
Right. That's what I mean.
Power, yeah, he's got his mutant power, for anyone. X-Men, factoid on a Sonic podcast is David Haller, Legion, is the son of Professor Xavier. His Omega level mutant power is that he has like 1 million split personalities, and each personality has its own mutant power. So he's kind of like infinite amount of powers, like Magic 8 Balls. Like, oh, I need someone with acid breath. Let me go grab my personality, aka Stinky George. And then he pulls Stinky George and uses acid breath.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of fun.
All I gotta say is, I know I'm digressing again, but that's such a great show. Everybody needs to go watch it and have long conversations with me about how great that show is. Anyway, Amy Rose. The point we're talking about this, or at least what I have to say about Amy Rose, is I really think that I think a lot of these Sonic characters, they're really trying to kind of erase their past. They're hoping like fans like us kind of, I mean, not 100% erase the past, because of course they know that. I think that like the creators, they're very aware of how passionate Sonic fans are, and they have great memories. Because it's a huge legion of people that they just have tons and tons of archives of everything. So it's like, it doesn't matter what they do, like any new iteration they make, there's always going to be somebody digging up some archive of like older material, right? Like, for example, like a lot of these, the one you were just mentioning earlier, the manga, the Shogakukan one with the Amy in it, like I didn't even know that existed. It was only thanks to like people like Linkabell on Twitter, who like sort of introduced it to me, and I made an actual effort to like, I guess the word would be privateer it, to put it together, because Sega's obviously not. They're not. Listen to me, I'm already a pirate. They're not making the effort to make us look at these or access these things anymore. Similar to like the Sonic Archie comics, like I have had to go through eBay to like try to get every. I mean, this is one of my goals: is try to get every Archie Sonic comic. Because, this is the annoying thing about being a fan of this IP. It kind of feels like being a Star Wars fan in a lot of ways. because you have so many comics, and then they changed them, right? Either through censorship or because what is it? Certain plot lines, or because of the Pender stuff, or whatever, right? And then sometimes they add things to it, and then you get a whole legion of like other fans that like certain things one way, and I don't know, man. It's driving me to the point where it's like I don't think Sega can really erase its past at this point. They sort of have to embrace it. But the problem with someone like Amy is, you have kind of this very kind of, I guess, for more or less, a kind of a toxic story about her kind of obsession with it. I think this is a very fascinating story, mind you. I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
I think this is because I think what are stories? Stories are things that are made to teach you something. They're also great lies, but it's also kind of like, I mean, some people say it's escapism, but I personally I think I look at more stories like how to understand reality, because the reality you live in, a lot of it doesn't make any sense. Right. And I sort of want to understand what is the reality I live in. I mean, I know this is a very deep conversation, I mean, I'm a filmmaker, a former filmmaker, whatever you want to call me. I mean, I have YouTube channels. I've made documentaries. I've made short films, that sort of thing. But that's the sort of thing is that if they want to make a story based in this, I don't know how they escape their past. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of running, and naturally, because this is the Sonic franchise, I
hey,
think there's pun on my job. Whew. um,
thumbs up
there's
for
a lot of
puns.
run. Yeah, points for puns. There is a lot of running when I think most people, even if they don't necessarily like or were privy to Sonic's past, and it's very multimedia, just acknowledge it. Clearly some things have evolved, and I think we all kind of have to accept that at some point. But as long as we know that, oh, the past it still exists, we all can kind of hopefully get along. But a lot of times what Sega does is they try to sweep things, under the rug into the pit of despair and oblivion.
Well, I guess sort of the thing here. I've tried to figure this out myself. Like, how do you make an Amy game that kind of interests people? For me, what I like about the character, or at least what I'm sure you remember that 30th anniversary IDW special they did with
Hmm.
Classic Sonic. To me, I know they want to separate the classic characters and the adventure characters. Um, to me, classic Amy is much more fun than modern one. I mean, or at least because of the iteration we are given today with modern one. Uh, classic Amy sort of has this character where she's sort of down on their luck, and they're a muscle. They're a muscle character, but they kind of really get ignored, and they're not always the main character, right? Kind of the second fiddle syndrome. I don't know, mind you. I just made this word up. I don't know if this is a thing, but and I think that's very relatable. You know, not somebody who's always struggling to fit in. Someone who can't, fit in with the I don't know Sonic and Knuckles and Tails and all the rest of these characters. I
She
think
wants to be a part of the group, but it's not. She's not giving her opportunity to be a part of the group. That's basically a line she kind of roughly says in the issue.
right. I think that's a good direction for the character. Kind of give the character motivation in terms of like wanting to fit in. Is that toxic? I don't know. Please feel free to tell me, because one thing I will get from watching Sonic Adventure or the modern Amy side, the one thing I enjoyed about that was whenever you saw her with Sonic the Hedgehog, it felt so rewarding. You're like, finally, she gets what she wants, right? And I feel like that's a good direction. But I guess supposedly what's toxic about this is how do I put this in words? Uh, from what I remember, I remember a woman I talked to about this character. They always told me that they disliked Amy because they sort of feel like this obsessive behavior is unhealthy. It's not a good thing to be teaching people that you should obsess about something. And that's where I think that's where like Ian and the gang are trying to pivot out of, because they don't want her to be too obsessive. They don't want her to be what's that anime term? The yuri? What do they call that? Help me out here.
Um, well,
I don't watch
Yuri
enough.
is
I mean, I
something
live in
else.
Japan and I don't know anything about these anime terms.
Yuri is a different thing. That's a whole nother. Yeah. But I think, are you talking about like a tsundere?
Tsundere, thank you. I don't watch enough anime to like, you know, to be well versed in this. You think I should be, but I'm not. I don't know. Malzilla, thoughts? Tell me.
Um,
Contradictions.
yeah, contradictions.
What is it?
A
Am I a
a
massive
classic.
hypocrite? Tell me.
No. I think there's a lot of nuance to kind of how you could play an Amy game. I think a classic Amy game would be fun. I This is going to be kind of an odd choice, but I would, if I was Sega, I said, this is what we're going to do for an Amy game. It's not going to be classic. It's going to be modern, but unlike Sonic, who is, your high-speed action platformer, I would make an Amy Rose game based around a side scroller beat 'em up game where you basically play her, you have her hammer, you go up around the map, you beat badniks, you have some cool powers with her fortune cards. I mean, think Turtles in Time, the new Power Rangers game, Reader's Rewind that's coming out, the old X-Men, arcade game, uh River City Girls being a major, influence. I love that game.
I
I'm
got an
so
idea. I
excited.
got an idea. Did you
Oh,
ever play Toomba
I did not.
or
I
Tomba?
have
I
no
think it's
Toma.
Tomba. That was a
Uh,
great game. If it was like that, yeah, that's like half beat 'em up, half RPG, that sort of thing. That would work.
yeah,
Maybe that's what they're working on. I hope I'm predicting the future. Sega, please
and
tell me
think
I'm
about it
predicting the
because
future.
it's like you can, and it doesn't just have to be Amy. Like you, again, kind of playing into if they're using Frontiers as the start of this whole new narrative era of Sonic. Again, Amy's doing her little travel thing. You want to bring in like Sticks. You want to bring in Honey the cat. This you could do that. You can make
Oh,
them
like little
playable characters.
cameos? Yeah.
No, not just cameos. Like again, I'm going to use River City Girls 2 as an example. You have your main two characters, you have the two boys that are their boyfriends, and then you got unlockable characters as you play through the game. And sometimes you can unlock additional characters after you beat it the first time. So you could start off with Amy, maybe Cream, Rouge. You could bring in Blaze, just say she's still on her very long Sonic's World vacation that, she's kind of doing in the comics right now, and just kind of have them go through various environments, beating things up. They all have unique abilities. Um, Heck, you could bring in Surge as a boss, if you want to give her a debut. You could debut Sally in the game as a playable or a boss,
Yeah,
and
here's the
I
thing,
think
man. It's like Sega has so much to work with, and I feel like we're getting nothing. Tell me I'm
no, and
wrong.
you're not wrong. And again, I think just for my pitch, my fan idea, you know, have Amy's got her hammer, Cream's got cheese, Rouge has kicks and bombs, Stick's got her boomerang. You could bring Trip in with her spear. You could, Sally, everyone thinks she'd be tech based. No, give her like a shield, like Captain America. She's from Sega of America, so it's kind of a ha ha ha. The American character is playing like another American character, and you just have fun. You get like some nice pixel animation. You have some fun music. You have fun environments because again, Sonic's more of that action platforming in those big open spaces. But for like Amy, since again she is a very passionate character, she works well. She works at her best with others as opposed to by themselves, which some people like Sonic by himself in various capacities. But yeah, that's my pitch. Give me the Amy side scroller beat 'em up. Rose, we can call it Rose Rumble if that's not
Nice. I like
copyright
it.
infringement somewhere. I think it is, but yeah, Amy game, I'd be down.
Because from what I understand, like the Peach Showtime game, this is obviously what is it? It's a very simple game for girls, and not to. I mean, again, I hate to sound like I'm talking down to people. If I am, please let me know. It's never my intention. Um, I always have to start with this because people are leaning on the edge of their seat. What's he gonna say? What's he gonna say? He's gonna say something bad. No, what I wanted to say is that from what I understand, the Peach game is very easy, and this is developed for girls. Now, think about girl games. I'm not saying that there aren't girl game concepts in like boy games. I mean, a lot of girl game concepts often focus on things that about like dress up or makeup. Well, not just makeup. I mean, you do this in boy games too. It's just like warrior paint, right? But
Your henshin transformations.
actually, was it Malzilla? Help me out here. So, like, when you think of girl games from the '90s, what do you think besides the color pink and dress up? What are in girl games? Like, what was it that turned you off about girl games? Like, obviously, pink is a big thing because I still have what is it? I remember when I was teaching students at a school. If you wanted to get the boys really upset, you hand them pink folders. I don't know why they're so allergic to that color. It's just a damn color, man.
That's a whole other,
That is a whole other can of worms. But
exactly. But yeah, they're the girl characters in games. Pink has always kind of been the thing. There are concepts that are kind of quote quote more feminine than masculine. And again, you could do a series of podcasts of gender norms in video games.
this is true. This is true.
But for like the sake of kind of what we're going,
it should be for all. It should be for all genders. It should be accessible for both. Is what you're saying?
Exactly. Because I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, regardless if you're picking up Peach's Showtime or the upcoming Echoes of Wisdom for Zelda, you should be, regardless of who you are, should be able to pick it up and have a good time. Game quality is always going to trump. I'll just use that word. Trump.
It will always Hillary. It'll always Biden our way through. It'll always Buttigieg our way up to the next way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or Clinton. But yeah, if the game is good, people will play it. It's like my motto with our show. If we pod it, people will listen in time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like Sega has I always watch like these videos on like what Sega could do, and there's so many cool ideas. But for some reason, actually, maybe I do know the reason. It's just they're scared. They don't know what to do, and they're trying. And I think this is part of the problem, is they don't know really what to do. So they end up copying and, seeing what else is. I mean, this is a thing they do in Japan often, or at least I see it all the time. I don't know if I have a very limited understanding of the world or what, but to me, it seems like what I'm seeing is they're copying other people. They're seeing what's successful, and they're just going with it. It's sort of like how, like, what was it, The Matrix in the early 2000s was really popular for a while, and everybody copied that style. And I just sort of feel the same thing with, like, Sonic in a lot of ways. Where it's like, well, Breath of the Wild was popular. Let's do that, right? That sort of thing. And I do worry that they kind of, they succumb to like this curse of copying other people. And I mean, sure, there is value in copying other people if you remix it, if you have clever ideas, but it gets to the point where, like, if you lean too much in this direction, it's like, what even is this anymore? It becomes one of these things where you play, like, what is it, Sonic Superstars, and you're like, is this like Mario Wonder, but not Mario Wonder? Do you know what I mean? It gets to the point
Yeah.
where it's like, this is the one problem. Actually, this is one of the problems I have with Amy, or at least one of the directions they're going with her. Is I don't want them to do this thing where it's like, oh, it's Sonic but female. You know what
And
makes
that
that?
seems to be a lot of kind of what she's been like in the last 5, 6 years. But
Yeah, definitely.
that's the direction Sega's going with, whether we like it or not. Um, and I guess maybe this is a good segue into our main topic of
Well, hold on.
what.
We're not into the
We're
segue
not
there
there.
yet.
Okay.
There's one thing
Well,
I wanted to talk about before we go into the next segue. Um, so last week we talked about the Freedom Fighters and how to establish them into the current IP and how to put them back in, how to fit them in. But I feel like we needed to talk about the topic and have a bit of more specifics about what we meant by it. Now, you are trying to establish that they need proper narratives. Is this correct?
I think what I was trying to put forth was kind of disprove the notion that they don't fit the narrative, that their characters would be superfluous, that they just wouldn't fit, that they only fit in the continuity that they originally spawned from, which again I say is Balderdash. You can be true to the character in multiple continuities. Multiverses are a thing. You know, Peter Parker exists in multiple versions. Each Spider-Man is different. I would say in Marvel Comics right now that the alternate universes of Peter Parker are a lot more entertaining than the mainline. Because again, peel back the comic curtain. Uh, right now in the mainline comics, Peter Parker is basically been brainwashed by Norman Osborn into a spider goblin. So, think Green Goblin and Spider Man did the fusion dance type thing. And he's off gallivanting and being bad. Whereas, like, in the new Ultimate Spider Man alternate universe, which is kind of spins out of the old Ultimate continuity, I think, we have a Spider Man, a Peter Parker, who got his powers as an adult. And so, now you see him balancing, being married to Mary Jane, having 2 kids, being a superhero. You know, he's friends with Harry Osborn now. They just met, and Harry Osborn's kind of, become the Green Goblin, but kind of as a mech-based Iron Man type character. Uncle Ben is still alive. Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson are like BFFs. They like decided they were going to quit the Daily Bugle and form their own news company. They talked about this in a sauna. It was kind of weird, but people really liked it. So again, multiple universes exist, but their core concepts, things that make them, are still present. So again, Sally, Rotor, Bunny, Antoine, Nagus, Dulcie, Lupe, Snively, Uncle Chuck. Yeah, they all originated somewhere else, but their core characteristics can be integrated into the major story IDW game world. It's a big world. There's room enough for everyone. I
Okay.
will get off my soapbox now.
No, because the reason why I wanted to bring this back up before we dive into the investor reports, because this is a big one. This is a big topic. I think a lot of people overlook and they don't look into it. And they're not focusing on, they're not seeing the forest from the trees. I think the biggest problem here is that I think we really need to sell the Freedom Fighters to Sega of Japan. And I think it needs to be done in a very Japanese way. Because as you'll see in the Revesta reports, there are a lot
Make them a
more.
Sentai team.
What?
Make the Freedom Fighters a Sentai team. Transformations, Zords. Yeah, we can do it. That's
Well, that's
that's
one way
that's
to
how we
do
make
it.
them.
Yeah, sure.
I'm joking, but not really.
I think it
Go
really
go Freedom Rangers.
you could probably sell it from that angle. You could do the whole Sentai thing. Um, I think it also depends on like again, I'm going to keep stressing this again and again, is that, or at least I mean, I'm not the only one who says this. I know that there's other people who say that people are treating Sonic like he's a mascot because heck, why don't we dive into it? Let's dive into the reports because I could just keep going on and on and on and on about this. But I
Welcome to
think
Sega Sammy 101. Your professors Radrey and Malzilla will begin the lecture.
oh no, 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 no. It's not one. I mean, okay. First and foremost, if anyone listening knows of anyone who, because I might ask some people to come on. Some of this is like such business talk. I'm looking through some of this and I'm like, what does this even mean? But from what my pea brain tells me, this is what I understand from reading this and what I gather or what I interpret from reading this. Uh, Malzilla and I, we both went to the Sega Sammy website to check out their investor reports. Now, these are people. This is like people like you and me, or anybody probably listening, can go
All public
invest.
information.
Yeah, all public information. Anybody can, invest in this company. And so, of course, if you want to know more about who you are investing in, they, of course, have some reports. And a little bit of information that tells you about who they are and what are their projected goals. And, well, let me tell you, some of the information here, I'm like, okay. So, first and foremost, let's begin with the Sega Sammy individual investors. Of course, there is a message from the CEO, Haruki Satomi. So he talks here. He gives like a business report of like every quarter. And there's been a couple of things that he said that stood out to me. So for the most recent one of the quotes he said was, however, in order to promote global branding of existing IPs, we plan to conduct a simultaneous worldwide release of new titles for our mainstay IPs such as Sonic, Persona, Like a Dragon, across multiple platforms, and will strive to steadily sell them. So, obviously, number one, these are mainstay IPs, and they're going to constantly be pushing these out. The other note that I found was, however, in order to produce... Oh, wait, actually, I already read this one already. Sorry. My notes got messed up. Forgive me. The second one I found out was, we aim to become number one in total utilization of pachinko and pachinko slot machines, while continuing to aim to win the Triple Crown top share in utilization, installation, and sales for long term. So from what I understand about this is they're hungry. They're looking for the top pie. They want everything they can get. So Malzil, what do you make of all this? From based upon first off, let me ask you this. This is the research I did. I have more to say, but before I go any further, is there anything you want to add before I keep continuing?
Just kind of a broad spectrum. Again, this is all public information. If you own stocks of any company, you usually get your quarterly reports where it kind of says, okay, this is what we did. This is how much we made. These are the stuff we're looking toward in the future. So there's a little bit of forecast, typical business stuff. Now again, I think we might need to give a little context of what Sega Sammy is. Obviously, these are two companies that merged together 10 years ago. When did the merger happen? Or was it a buyout?
Question. I
That's,
think it was a buyout. I mean, they
I'm
bought
pretty
out
sure it was.
Rovio too, so I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
obviously, because my impression is they bought Sega, or Sammy bought Sega because they wanted the Sonic mascot. They wanted something
Probably.
that people trusted, so they could put them on slot machines and say, "See, kids, we're a family company. We're not
Hey,
selling out your family to pachinko slot machines. No."
Sonic's been pro gambling since 1992.
God damn it. Yes,
Casino Night Zone.
yes.
But kind of going into it, it's pretty obvious if you look at the breakdown of the board of directors. Sega Sammy collectively is Sammy in the driver's spot and Sega is in the back of the minivan, just kind of holding on for dear life. Maybe that's a little bit hyperbole, but Sega's really not in control of the dynamic.
Oh, no, no, no.
And
If you watched the Moon Channel, which I did some research before, doing the show, I'm a big fan of this one YouTube channel called the Moon Channel, who is a lawyer who explains everything about video games and video game IPs. Great show. Everybody should go watch him. He talked about how Sega Sammy, which is very odd. Usually, most of the time, big companies, they always put their name first. So you'd think it would be Sammy Sega. But no, this one is Sega Sammy, which is trying to make you wonder, why did they do that?
because Sega's more well known.
Is that what it is?
That's how what makes sense to me because again, Sega. When you say that, everyone kind of thinks Sega, or they think of Sonic. It's kind of Disney, Mickey Mouse, Warner Brothers, the Looney Tunes. Again, as you said, character mascots. It's the mental image that we all get.
Mm-hmm. To repeat, another quote that I found from this report, Haruki Satomi maintains, "We will continue to promote the global branding of the Sonic series, which is one of Sega's flagship IPs. So, that in mind, we're going to see a lot more Sonic content." One thing that particularly stood out to me was they also said the Sonic the Hedgehog series, which is especially popular overseas. So they're fully aware that domestically, this character is not so big here.
Nope, he is not.
Another point that I got out from his quarterly reports, the most recent one. Overall, however, the business posted higher salaries and lower profits compared with the same period of previous fiscal year due to weak performance of new titles in full game and free-to-play in the pachinko and pachinko slot machine businesses. We promoted sales centered on pachinko slot machines, including smart pachinko slot Hotoku no Ken and smart pachinko slot Biohazard Vendetta, and achieved strong sales performance of 130,395 pachinko slot machines. So, what's particularly interesting about this? Now, this is just the individual investor report. I want to segue here to the more integrated report of 2023. For me, is a lot more eye-opening than this one. What's interesting is they maintain this idea of, what is it? The mission statement is being beyond the status quo. Now, what's why are you laughing? What are the giggles?
Sega status quo. Look it up in the dictionary. Sega, see status quo. Flip over to status quo. See Sega. That's my cynical joke. I'm sorry.
Okay. No. I mean, what's particularly interesting about this is obviously you can tell that these people are very hungry for making it to that top spot, right? And I mean, you even see like news articles of like people who work at Sega saying things like, "Oh, well, we want to outsell Mario. Oh, well, we want to make a successful Sonic game." And particularly there's a lot of things from these integrated reports. They talk about one thing is they talk about the materials issues that they want to address. They want sustainability that helps keep these are their words. Sustainability that helps keep life colorful with human resources, addiction, products and services, governance, and environment. What's particularly interesting about this is I don't know what direction they're going with this. I'm not really sure, like, what it is their mission statement is. Like, they have, like, from what I understand, there's, like, 3 pillars of how they're going to go past the status quo. The 3 pillars are, they have their entertainment content business on top, and then their pachinko slot, pachinko machines, and then they have their resort business. What's particularly interesting about this for me is number one, where Sonic is, the entertainment content business. It says from this report, reinforcing the earnings base by strengthening the global branding of existing IPs. So obviously, they want to make Sonic a stronger brand, and they're looking to push to make it a stronger brand. And then the second part of this, they say investment stage towards becoming a global player. So let me ask you: is this laughable, or are you taking them seriously?
I'm having a light chuckle.
Okay. Do you
A
think
light chuckle.
it's a little too premature? Do you think it's a little too full of themselves?
I think when you play the game of Thrones, or in this case, the game of console video games and all that fun jazz, you do have to have a degree of ambition and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of on both of those is just how much you can fake it till you make it. Um, yes, Sega as a company needs to strive to be a player on the global scale like they used to be. But the proof is in the pudding. Words are wind. Actions speak louder than words, and the product speaks for itself. Um, what good numbers sold for Sega games are not necessarily good numbers for Nintendo games. So you're kind of almost have to kind of grave it on a curve. It's like perfect example. I'm going to talk about, and this is different but the same idea as concept.
Okay.
The Godzilla film franchise is 70 years old. There are so many movies of different quality that, with the recent MonsterVerse films, like my personal favorite, Godzilla King of the Monsters, or Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla v Kong, Godzilla 2014, Kong Skull Island, and a lot of the old Heisei films, is you'd have to put a caveat on when you'd say, oh, I like this movie, it's good for a Godzilla film. So it's almost saying it's in its own category of judgment. You need to separate it from everything else because it won't stack up. Whereas, say, like Godzilla Minus One is a good film. It's a great film. It's an amazing film. I just had one of my coworkers today in New York message me, said, "Hey, we watched Godzilla Minus One with my boyfriend." I'm like, "You watched Godzilla Minus One?" And she said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, that makes me happy." She said she enjoyed it. You know, when non-fans can acknowledge that this is good, that's something good, and taking it back to Sonic games, where if a non-Sonic fan says, "Oh, this Sonic game is really good, I really enjoy it," that's something good, as opposed to saying, "Oh, this game is good," for Sonic games. It's kind of a backhanded compliment, slap in the face.
Yeah, it's kind of become a laughing stock, right?
More or less.
I mean, it's like to relating it to other IP. Like for example, let's use the example of Star Wars. I don't know how they make Star Wars interesting again after all the proliferation of all the Star Wars stuff they've pulled out now. You know, it's like I mean, if unless it's the Mandalorian, I don't even want to touch Star Wars anymore. I'm just not interested in that universe. It's like the story's over. Like, what more can you tell about this? There's only like so much you can talk about, like Rebels versus Empire. So it gets to the point where it's like, I think early. Okay, here's the smoking gun to me. When I was looking at this report, this is the thing that stuck out to me the most. Now, I know this is a lot of jargon. This is a lot of too much didn't read. And if you made it this far, despite all this blah, 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 like integrated report stuff, thank you. Thank you for sticking up this far. Because I did have a point. There are things I got to talk about. Therefore, the report says this. Now, it talks about Sonic in particular. It says the Sonic IP, which arose out of the games, has seen steady expansions into movies, anime, and other media. Sonic has grown into a huge IP, the most successful example of our IP strategy. More than anything else, the secret behind the success lies in our continued pursuit of the sheer fun of the game where it got its start. Now, maybe you could say I'm overreading this, but to me, this says they obviously know they need to keep going back to their past in order to get new viewers. They need to go back to those old ideas and sort of, I guess, for lack of a better word, refurbish them into something that's current. Because, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of Sonic games, the thing is that he gets new fans every generation, right? This isn't like, oh, this is a boomer game, or, oh, this is, only for them millennials, or it's only for those Zoomers, right? It's almost, well, I guess maybe excluding the boomers, because it didn't exist when boomers were around, but unless there were boomers playing these games, I don't think there were. But pretty much is that they will eventually have to start digging up the things of what people remember. And for people like ourselves, us Sonic fans, we are the megaphones, which tell others about good content. This is why games like Sonic Mania, it was a success. Now, with this being said, there is a caveat with all this. Superstars is particularly interesting because Superstars seemed like it was everything we wanted, but the sales weren't very good, right? So I do worry that even if we ask for what we wanted, nobody's going to buy it. So we have to figure out in a way for that makes it easy for people to refurbish this old material into something, brand new that connects with the audience, which I think is hard, but it can be done.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I think with Superstars, again, I mentioned it, I think back in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine game. It's just, I think it shot itself in the foot in a variety of ways. Just thinking Sega, had the testicular fortitude to release a game so close to a Mario game in a way like, hey, look, it's the 90s again. Sonic v Mario. Let's do it.
Yeah, but that game was too much like Wonder. If I guess I had to complain about it, it's just like the marketing was the same, the look of it was the same. It's like I play Sonic because it's something different, I watched Sonic Sam because it was different than the other shows. I mean, sure, you could argue that it had a lot of concoctions from like the Don Bluth era and the dark kind of Blade Runner-esque design. Like what's that show? SWAT Cats, remember that? Stuff like that. I mean, you could say sure, all of the tools were all there to make Sad-Am or to make Sonic, of course, but I think in my opinion, what the character needs to do is it needs to embrace itself. It needs to be something to where it's not trying to be too much like something else. I mean, sure, you can obviously do like the remix thing, where what Kojima does with Metal Gear Solid, mix elements of like Predator and I don't know, what else did he use? There's a bunch of like little tiny touches here, like I see you ripping off Predator, that sort of thing. Because what is it? In Metal Gear Solid, like one of the characters could be invisible, like Predator. People who don't know what Predator is or what Metal Gear Solid is, but yes. Oh, and he also ripped off James Bond and a couple of other things. But
Kojima is a cinephile of the highest level. It's the reason why like his best friends are Mads Mikkelsen and Guillermo del Toro. Again, he's a cinephile of the highest degree. That's
right. I'm just saying this is remixing done right. I mean, maybe you could say it's a little too much and it's a little too campy, but I think it works. But sure, Sonic's not a character that doesn't shy away from this too much. I mean, sure, you have the Super Sonic, which is like the Super Saiyan thing from Dragon Ball, and obviously Frontier stole a lot of ideas from Dragon Ball. But yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm just saying this can be done. I think I like the direction that Frontiers. Okay, I should say off first and foremost that this integrated report, it praises the hell out of Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers is their baby. They love this thing, you know. So obviously Ian and the gang, they're not going anywhere. They're still using them. I guarantee it, because you know whatever makes the money, whatever make, because they kind of really they downplayed Superstars a lot. You can kind of tell in these reports that they didn't want to put it in the spotlight because they're not proud of this one. They're proud of Frontiers, and they want another game like Frontiers. Oh, so maybe you might be able to talk a little bit about this, Malzilla.
Hmm.
They talk about in this report a super game. What
Ah,
is that?
yes. This was the thing that caught my eye. So in the report, they kind of have their big forecasting plans in the vaguest possible descriptions of that Sega wants to release by 2026, so year and a half from now, a super game. Now, what that means, I have no idea. I mean, it could be a Sonic game, it could be a Persona game, it could be a
I think they're just saying. I
Yakuza
think they're
game.
just saying AAA game that gives them prestige and money.
Yeah, probably.
I'm
So
pretty sure it's
and
just
again,
that.
I would say if anything, that if they want to create a super game, Sonic's going to be the way they do it. And if we think about it, okay, we're by the time you're listening to this, we're halfway through 2024. Yeah, we're recording this on June 20th, Pacific time, June 21st,
21st here.
Tokyo
Yes.
21st there. Yeah. So it's the summer solstice. We are exactly 6 months away from the release of Sonic Movie 3, and that's coming in at the end of the year. So we don't know any Sonic future Sonic titles beyond this year. I do feel that if they try to release another big Frontiers level game in 2025, that might be a little too soon. And as we've been talking, I saw some reports that they're not going to do a Sonic showcase this year or a Sonic Central, so that's kind of usually their big little hey, look at stuff coming out in the
Well,
near
it was all
future.
stuff we already knew. It's like I don't.
Exactly.
They don't
So
really need to do it unless they got some big announcement. I guess
so
I don't
if
know. Maybe they just can't get rid of the leaks. You know, they can't find that
exactly.
Midori person who keeps leaking all the stuff.
Yeah. So with that, you got all this stuff. If they announce something by the end of the year for 2025, I could see it, but I think for the game that I think Sonic fans want and Sonic fans deserve, barely a year, 2 year, 2.5 year development time is not enough. So, but say for example, if they, much how they announced Sonic X Shadow Generations in January for what is essentially going to be an October release. So a game that's going to come out 9 months later. You know, if beginning of next year, January, February, we hear rumbling of a Sonic game for 2026, maybe this is the super game. Maybe they're going to take what they had from Frontiers and compound it. Um, and kind of
Make it less
another
boring. Make
topic
it
I
less
wanted
boring, please.
make it less boring. But another thing is one thing Sega has been talking about in the last few months is compiling all their employee assets together. So not just one studio making or one office making a game. You're pulling talent from its various office markets. And another thing, a little graphic in the investors report is showing the allocation of employees across the globe. The majority of employees are in Asia, which so you figured, Japan, maybe China, South Korea. The second amount of employees are in Europe. They have a lot of subsidiary companies in Europe. But what shocked me the most is Sega Sammy has less than 500 employees in North America. So, you know, I've kind of always lauded as Sega of America as kind of the unsung bastion of Sega and Sonic. But you're looking at less than 500 employees in the continental North America, and that shocked me. I thought they'd have more, but probably the majority are just corporate licensee. I'm sure they have some developers, art, music, obviously, but again, it's kind of for as strong as the brand is outside of the Japan and Asia, there's not a whole lot of employees over on this side of the Pacific, which kind of surprised me, but yeah, it checks out
Well,
in some
another thing that
instances.
kind of surprised me is that I don't know if you've been following the news. They've also recently unionized over there, which is, if you know anything about Japan, is there's one thing Japanese companies absolutely hate. It's a union. They don't like that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's kind of one of those things where Sega of America and Sega of Japan have had very two almost philosophical opposing viewpoints on everything since like day one. Again, you have a lot of SOAs, business strategies, based off an American school of thought, a Western school of thought, a very individualistic school of thought, where a lot of, from what I learned in my business classes in college in Japan, you know, in Japanese business, it's the collective. It's always been a very collectivist society. So those are, the sum is greater than its parts, where a lot of the Western stuff, the parts make up the sum. But yeah, kind of going in that direction. And it's kind of evolved where, especially with unions, you know, you just, God, words, brain fart. Yeah, Japan doesn't like dealing with them. Uh, Americans companies don't like dealing with them, but unions are important. They do fight often for the unsung rights of the employees because employees do get pushed a lot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at the article right now. Um, this comes from March 27th, 2024. Uh, I guess, yeah, they've implemented it already. So Sega of America employees secured a union contract Tuesday that provides wage increases and established them as the first workers of a major U.S. video game company to ratify a union contract. A milestone that comes a few months after a wave of layoffs impacted thousands of video game company employees. The key talking points here are talking about this is like 150 workers. It's not that many. I mean, maybe that's a lot. I don't know.
For a lot of game companies I think we think they're bigger than most of them are. So, 100 layoffs is actually quite a bit. And knowing some people who work
Well, 100
in the
layoffs.
video
Yes,
game,
that's a bit. Yes. Considering there's only 400 people who work there. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I myself in 2020 was a part of a 2,500 employee layoff. So yeah,
Oof.
it's shitty, and especially in video games where a lot of employees are kind of on a contract to contract basis. Like I've talked to friends who have been QA for video games where it's like, yeah, we're gonna hire you to work for like 4 or 5 months, and then when the game's out, your contract's over, and if we like you
Bye,
in 3 months,
bitch.
we'll take you. Yeah, it's either buy bitch or three
Yeah.
months later, hey, we're bringing you back for another game.
Right. Right.
It's in a time where job security has kind of been at the forefront of a lot of our brains. Going 6 months on a paycheck with paychecks, and then knowing, oh, I won't get a paycheck for another 3 4 months, even though I have downtime. It's I can go on vacation, but you need money to live, and especially when you don't have money coming in, and that can be an issue, and that happens a lot in video games.
Yeah. Also, a little side tangent here. I'm looking at this article. It says workers will also receive advance notice of any planned use of AI. Now, this is the interesting going forward in this world that we live in. It's really interesting, or at least to me. recently is whenever somebody sees something that's boring or mid, as the kids call it, everybody automatically says, "Was this written by AI? Was this made by AI?" So it's like, are companies like under pressure now, or like, or I guess media companies or movie companies or anybody who makes like any sort of media, is it always going to be like, was this made by AI? I think that's going to be the argument going forward, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an a comment, you know, made going forward.
So I
I
guess
think,
go on.
you know, if I hadn't seen a picture of Ian Flynn in person, I would almost say, could see people starting saying that, Ian Flynn isn't an actual person. He is an AI that Sega has come up with to write Sonic for them.
Here's another thing I also love about like, I'm sure this is entirely intentional, where it's like none of us really know the names of or maybe it's not intentional at all. Maybe it's just we're all stupid and we need to do a research. It's probably that. It's just that a lot of the time we blame a company rather than an individual. Like when you think about like individuals are the ones who make all this stuff. They're the ones who are like responsible for this. But obviously, they kind of lie underneath the shield of that is Sega. Sort of similar to like the Adult Swim thing we were talking about last week. That they didn't even credit the person who drew it, right? So they couldn't like attack the person who made that, right? They lie under the shield of that is Adult Swim, right?
And there are kind of pros and cons to each side of that. Is that some cases, whether we think a bad choice is made by an individual or by a company, I think more than often, whether it was made by an individual or not, the company has to take some ownership of it because ultimately, at the end of the day, they approved it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, and also at the same time, especially if you're a freelance writer working on a licensed property that is world known and is, has a lot of, guidelines, you're writing with one hand behind your back. You're not free. You're not allowed to be cringe, but free. You're only you know how the meme goes. I'm cringe, but at least I'm free. Or I'm free, but I'm cringe. Or however it goes.
No,
But
I know what you
you know,
mean. I know what you mean. All right, so before we wrap everything up for today, I had one more final thought before we break for the evening or morning
oh,
or
can
whenever it
I say
is.
something?
Yeah, say your thing.
Because I know you had told me about this kind of going back a little bit into the Sammy side of things with their very much their emphasis on pachinko. You were telling me how the Japanese government tried to get a valid casino in Odaiba, sponsored by Sega.
Oh
And I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying, like,
Shinzo Abe was trying to get that through, but then COVID happened, and then he got assassinated. So
eh.
it's not gonna happen
All
now.
I'm saying
Maybe
is
Kishida might
if
bring it up. Who knows? He's
all
not
I know
doing very
is
well at the yen right now. But yeah, go on.
if Sega were to build a casino, a Sega themed casino in Tokyo, on Odaiba, that where I could go in as a foreign visitor with lots of money to spend. If I could go into a Sega Sonic Casino,
Sorry,
Casinopolis
I
themed,
just had this image. Go
or,
on. I'll tell you in a minute.
or I can go up to a craps table and then I can have a waitress dressed as Rouge the Bat offer me cocktails. I'd do it, no shame. I'd be there in a heartbeat. I'd be booking my planes and
I'm
my
not going to the
reservation now.
furry casino. Fuck that.
Oh,
Those
you
furries
would.
and
You
they're
would.
freaks. The freaky furry people that operate the casinos there. No, I
Everyone
was
loves
just
Rouge the Bat.
I don't know. I kind of feel like some of this might be a conflict of interest. I'm not sure,
Oh,
or
probably.
it probably is like a. I mean, it would be funny if it did happen. Maybe they don't give a shit because this is Japan. Sometimes they don't give a shit. Because like, kind of one of the sayings. I forgot. Maybe it's not a Japanese saying. I can't remember. But like one of the sayings is anything goes, right? So I'm sort of I'm picturing like what is it, a Casinopolis where it's all Sonic themed, right? But like let's say you lose at like the craps tables or you lose at like the slots or whatever. And you remember all those like what is it? Like in Sonic
No,
Heroes.
to
What?
mimic the games, if you fail out the slot machines, it shoots mines at you, or maybe it shoots pachinko balls at you, and go ah.
Oh no! I was gonna say I was gonna use some of the lines from like Sonic Heroes, where like what is it, Knuckles of the gang? They berate you for like
Yeah.
getting a lower score. Like my favorite Knuckles line from the Sonic Heroes is always just enough to pass. That's gonna be the end of our show. I'm gonna put that at the end of every show now. I don't know.
Just enough to
Yeah,
pass.
we get an E+ for this E ranking
Well,
for
you
this episode.
had one final thought, so go ahead with the final thought.
Yes, final thought before we're just enough to pass. But yeah, it would be cool to have a Casinopolis. Let us know what you think, people in chat. I mean, that could be like they could over design the shit out of that. It'd be really cool. But anyway, my final thought here is I wanted to talk about the Freedom Fighters before we part for today.
It's a
Introducing them.
reoccurring theme on the show. It's a
Yeah, well,
reoccurring theme.
I think they need to be sold. From what Ian Flynn says on the Bumblecast, is they have an uphill battle, and I really feel like they need to be, again, I'm going to use this word again, refurbished in order to be sold to Sega Japan to be interesting. Now, I have experience of doing sales in Japan, and I know what will entice Japanese people to, buy said product of, like, let's say the Freedom Fighters. I can come up with a few ideas. I don't really want to go into it now because I have to get going. But let's save it for next episode. I can I'll come up with my little spiel. But for now, I do have a idea of how to sell it in Japan. I know you have your ideas, so I guess I'll have to bounce it off you.
Okay. Well, you want me to close this out?
Yeah, let's close this out. You
All
can
right.
you
Well,
can be the
again,
closer.
yeah, I'm the closer. Relief pitcher
Malzilla,
coming
the
out.
closer.
The closer. So again, I'm Malzilla, and with me, as always, is my good pal Radrey, and you have been
Yo
listening
yo.
to the Sonic Hosts Coast to Coast podcast, or maybe we should change our name to the Freedom Coast to Coast podcast, or
No,
something
we're
along that line.
C2C,
We are C2C.
SHC2C.
SHC2C. Please do follow us on our socials. There'll be links in the video description, as well as feel free to join our Discord, where we chat about many things, sometimes not Sonic related. Um, Everyone wish Radrey a happy mini weekend off as he goes off for a little weekend getaway. And
Shikoku.
tell
We're
us in
going
the
to Shikoku.
comments.
But yeah.
Tell us in the comments what you'd like to hear about next. Again, we're planning a full breakdown of the Paramount Sonic Cinematic Universe later in the year. But if you want to hear us talk about maybe some individual games, talk about more about IDW, maybe you want to hear us about Archie, why we love that crazy 24-year comic book run. Let us know. We'll find something to talk about. Hopefully it'll make you laugh. Maybe it'll make you cringe. Probably make you cringe. So till next time.
Just enough to pass.